Welcome to the HR Data Labs podcast, now part of the Work Defined Podcast Network. Join us as we explore the vital role of compensation, strategy, data, and people analytics in navigating today's complex business world. With the resources of Work Defined, we're now bringing you deeper insights and actionable ideas from top experts. Now, here is your host, David Turetsky. Hello and welcome to the HR Data Labs podcast. I am your host, David Turetsky, and as always, we bring you a fascinating person to talk about the world of HR. Today, we have with us Brian Platts from Flurry. Brian, how are you today?
I'm doing really good. Thanks, David.
Thank you for being here. So Brian, when we first started talking, we were talking about how cold it is. How cold is it for you in North Carolina?
Well, it's below 30 degrees, which doesn't happen that often. It's been colder, but yeah, it's the snow and the weather has been really rough this winter.
Yeah. Outside, when I got up this morning, it was less than 4 degrees. Actually, it was 2. I'm not talking about 2 Celsius. I'm talking about 2 Fahrenheit.
Wow.
Yeah, that was cold.
Yeah, not fun.
My car said, "Why are we going someplace? Can you do this later when it's a little warmer out?" I said no. So, Brian, why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and a little bit about Flurry?
Sure. So I have been in software business for my entire career, a little over 25, getting closer to, I guess, 30 years now. And that's across, multiple companies. My current company, and I'll tell you about it here in a moment, is Flurry. My company before this was Silk Road Technology. I started that with Flip Filipowski, and that was a talent management software company. So about half of those years that I've spent, in software, I've spent building HR software. So it's really good actually to be here to talk a little bit about that. Still am on the board of a great company in the HR space, Fuel 50, who does workforce mobility and talent pipelines, et cetera. But yeah, let me tell you just real quickly about what we do at Flurry. So our goal at Flurry, and really something that I continually saw at Silk Road in dealing with HR products, is the ability to bring data together and actually make it meaningful is extraordinarily challenging. And I think it's something we've all dealt with. So, developing a more generic, it's a more technical company, but a more generic way of making that better, really assembling knowledge out of documents, assembling knowledge out of SaaS application data, any sort of data, connecting those dots and turning it into real actionable knowledge. And doing it in sort of as easy button away as possible. So that means a lot of kind of AI and things behind the scenes to do it. And, where we focus on now is not only making that data actionable and sort of intelligent, but how do we now expose that for the use of AI to actually allow you to drive business outcomes? And so we're kind of going a little bit more up the stack to knowledge workers, and having them have the ability to use AI to plan out their day and actually do some things for them while they're asleep. Yeah. And actually have everything sort of ready for them. So that's what we're focusing on with Flurry.
That's awesome. And we're going to get into a lot more of that in a little bit. But first, what's one fun thing that no one knows about Brian Platts?
Well, I'm going to fib a little bit here because
it's okay.
There are some people who know, but very few.
That's all right.
But yeah, I actually started my career and started really thinking about software while driving a semi-truck. I was
there you go.
Not a very good college student and ended up getting a job over a summer to driving a semi. Really, really liked going across country, seeing everything. Spent a lot of time there. I was really always into computers and really plotted out my first company. And then when I stopped doing that, that's when I started the journey that's kind of carried me through to here.
There you go. Well, a lot of us do a lot of that, where we're doing something that we think is kind of mindless and doesn't take a lot of thought. And that means our brain cycles are taking up doing other things like thinking about our next company or what we're going to do for dinner that night. But I think you did a good job then, and you picked the right beginner.
Yeah.
Beginning role.
Yeah.
So
good timing. Yeah.
Let's just put it this way. You picked the right road to go down.
Yeah.
Sorry,
I get that. Yeah, no, it's good.
Very bad dad joke. So, Brian, we're going to be talking about how we deliver artificial intelligence by thinking about privacy and security so we can combine artificial intelligence data and people in a way that people trust.
Great.
Interesting topic.
Yeah. Well, it is for me, hopefully for others.
What happens when employees behave badly? Boy, we could do an entire TV show, maybe a Netflix special on that. Well, Ryan and I sat down and recorded episodes for FAMA, and we asked practitioners, give us your most outrageous story. The sales leader that brings cocaine to work, whatever. Just bring us the outrageous, and it is funny. So if you need a laugh, which we all do from time to time, search for workplace misconduct wherever you get your podcast, and you'll find it. And trust me, you will laugh and cry, but you'll definitely laugh. All right. Thank you.
So our first question, Brian, is, so if you're a CHR or a VP of people, or you're in people analytics, and you're listening to this right now, and you've been asked by your CEO to put your people data into AI, what should they be thinking about from a data foundation before they flip that switch?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people are getting CEOs asking them to go do stuff with AI, right? And
Yeah.
it's sort of a challenging request, especially because the space is evolving and odd and different than what we're used to. When we talk about data, and especially people data, I think there's a few things at a very high level that you just need to cover the bases for. One is, do you actually have good data for whatever it is you're being asked to do? And I think very little data would probably get a grade of an A. Most data has some issues with
Oh,
it.
yeah.
But
Especially HR data.
Oh, yeah, for sure. But you probably don't want your data to be like a D or an F, then you probably shouldn't move forward. But then it's really use case dependent as to, is the data good enough for what you're being asked to do? If you're looking at like trend data, compensation over time or things like that, it doesn't have to be precise. But if you're doing cost of living adjustments, that has to be extremely precise. So it kind of depends on what you're looking to do as far as where your tolerance is. But I'd say that's at least starters. Is the data that's going to be needed for the job right data?
Well, and I've been talking a lot about this with a lot of companies. It depends on, as well, is this public data? Is it very private data? Are these things you tell people, or are these things you're not telling people? What's the security around whether it's the model that you're using, whether it's an LLM, and are you training it using your data only? Is it exposed to the internet? Is it not? Is it in the wild? Is it behind a firewall? So many companies are very private about, obviously, their people data, that HR shouldn't be making those determinations, right? This should be done in conjunction with other partners.
Yeah, it should. I mean, I definitely think that other partners is both people within your
Yeah.
organization. So that's going to be technology leadership, who can understand the different options. And different partners is also, increasingly, because it's difficult for one person to know everything.
Right.
It's your technology vendors that you're working with and some of their expertise. And I don't know that I would fully trust either one of them 100%, but, two good opinions that you
Right.
can kind of help merge together. But yeah, especially with, the privacy aspect of it is there's a lot of FOMO around, well, anytime you use AI, the AI vendors are just going to absorb that information and spew it out to someone
Yeah.
else. And there are some cases where that's true, but then there's also been some other things that have come up in the market, like Amazon's Bedrock service. So you can get all the AI models through Amazon, but they guarantee that they're the ones running them. And that data is never going to go back to OpenAI or go back to
Interesting.
Anthropic for you, right?
Yeah.
So in OpenAI and Anthropic will set up agreements with you as well that also give you similar guarantees. The question is, how much do you trust them? So there are some options. I mean, it's something to think about importantly. Our approach has always been that we don't feed any of the data to the AI directly. We teach the AI through a very intelligent data layer how to query for the data. And so that query result isn't necessarily, we're not feeding all the employee data to the AI directly. We're explaining to the AI based on what the user asks, how to formulate an accurate query. And that query then retrieves the information that doesn't have to go to the AI. And that query is also permissioned, so the AI can never see any data, or the user can't see data that they have. So I think that becomes an important aspect to it. So yeah, just how good's your data? And then this is the next piece really that you're talking about here, which is what are security concerns around it? The third piece, and this is something that we see all over the place, and I think needs more attention than it typically gets, is that the way that data is typically organized is not the way business users ask questions. It's the way some software engineer created it.
Right.
A lot of big companies use SAP. All their data, it's a classic example, but all their data uses 8-character descriptions that are shorthand for German words for those things, right?
Right.
It's not aligned for typical questions. The idea of having a semantic layer that's able to kind of translate how a business user thinks about business-related analytics and questions to how the data itself is organized. And we see AI initiatives where people put data in front of business users, whomever they are, and they start asking questions that either the data's there, but it doesn't understand how to get to it, or in many cases, the people who had the data just never had the data that the users really cared about. They usually went somewhere else to do it. So then they get frustrated because they're like, well, I'm asking what I need to ask, but the data's not even there to begin with. Or
Well,
it's
and that's what
old,
we-
or, you know.
And that's what we've seen with chatbots, where an end user who's really speaking English is asking a chatbot something really simple, like what's my vacation accrual, or how do I access my benefits, or what's the URL for my benefits provider, or why is this so complicated? The system needs to go back and parse that and take that and turn it into a prompt. And a lot of times the chatbot just gets the person so frustrated because it gives them a crap answer or a bog answer, a standard answer that is coming off the shelf. And then they're just calling the HR person anyway. So the HR person's like, what do I need this darn chatbot for if it's not going to give the person the exact answer that the person's looking for? And so one of the things I've been talking to a lot of HR or HCM vendors is about, don't invest in chatbots if you're not sure that the answers they're getting are accurate. And are your processes updated? Are your process documents updated? Like to the letter, to the T, so that if someone says something about their overtime, and an overtime law has changed in their municipality, that it's accurate. Because if it's not, you could actually be facing lawsuits because the person got the wrong answer. They did something that wasn't what you had intended, and now they're in trouble, and you're in trouble. So, there's a lot there, dude.
Yeah, there's a lot there. I mean, and you need to be careful about what you're asking about. If you can isolate the audience, meaning it's people within your HR team, and they're asking analytical questions, we have great technology that can build you incredible dashboards with the data that's there, but it's also being used by someone who kind of understands what should be there, and they can identify issues, and they're not going to get really worked up over it. But if you're going to expose it to, the field, sort of as you're describing, then you need to think about accuracy. I mean, there's approaches to all of these things. It's not that it's impossible to do, but it's not as easy as I'm just going to put a chatbot on top of my data, right? And I think that's your point.
Yeah, exactly.
It's going to take some more thought than that, for sure.
Let's go to our second question, because this is actually kind of cool. What it does is it exposes a different angle on this, which is, how do you think that we need to be thinking about or solving for the need to share versus the need to protect with people data, especially now that agents have access to this really sensitive information?
Yeah, well, I think this is where the security of the data becomes critical, and being able to make sure that as you, David, are looking for something, and as I, Brian, am looking for something, that whatever it is that we're looking at is only accessible. The data is only the data that we would normally be able to see. And that really requires a different approach to how you think about and manage data. And it's not something that, SaaS applications, and I think that's probably the norm for most people in this space. I mean, they have notions of security, right? And in an HR system, if you log in, you ideally aren't seeing that information. The problem is when we're putting AI on top of it, and especially as we're facilitating business processes with it, it's not just the data in the HR that's needed. It's other
Right.
data.
Right.
Now we need to pull the data out of the HR system, combine it with other data, but all those rules and permissions that were in the HR system are no longer there, right?
Right.
So they need to be re-implemented or guaranteed that they're implemented in the correct way on top. And I think disclaimers can help as well. I think if people are using AI, they should just be upfront about it that, hey, this is a convenience that we're maybe pointing you in the right direction quickly, but you should double check things type of thing if
Yeah.
you need to.
Yeah. Well, we've definitely seen areas or issues around AI and having been accessed or giving access to certain things. And we've also seen misconfigurations of AI. And it's now coming out things like the eightfold litigation about disclaimers or the workday issues on recruiting and how that recruiting was set up. So don't you think that the next step in this is hopefully not litigious, but don't you think the next step is really an understanding or a fundamental education around what are we exposing and how are we exposing? I mean, I guess maybe even a better question to ask, Brian, is does HR know enough yet about AI and about what it's doing with the data to be knowledgeable enough to be able to make those decisions?
I think it depends on the use case. In some cases, yes, probably. In some cases, no. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of, Gartner came out with a stat recently that said 60% of AI is going to not be successful in the enterprise because of these data foundation issues.
Right.
I think about the SaaS boom that we had 15 years ago, right? Where we never had SaaS before then. Well, I guess we had maybe 20 years ago, and now we do.
Wow.
That brought in a tremendous amount of security issues. I mean, we're still even talking about those today. The problem is that's happening again with AI, but it's happening at 10 times the speed. So I think we can look back to what happened during the SaaS era and when every business leader was building an app and doing this and that. And, people had a hard time getting their hands around it. And those same issues, those same processes, they're literally just starting all over again.
Yeah.
But they're happening in a very short time.
And that's why I'm worried about the education, because so much of this stuff has happened as a lightning bolt. Then, and obviously there's also an issue about BYO, where a lot of organizations have people using artificial intelligence on their phones, on their computers, on their tablets, and they're exposing things about the company and about their practices and about their data. And the company doesn't even know about it. And that's why I'm asking from an educational perspective, isn't security and privacy one of those things we should be training HR about today, right now, before we start losing some of our intellectual property that we'll never be able to get back because Anthropic, and by the way, I'm not picking on you, Anthropic. I'm just picking on some of these more popular models that people are pouring data and money into, and they may not know that they're taking their data without their really understanding it.
Yeah. So I think there's proper protections where you can safeguard your data, right? So there's approaches, but yes, we need education so people understand that. I think one of the biggest risks we're seeing right now is that because this stands to be such a productivity boost, people are installing tools and utilities on their computers. That needs to likely get locked down. There are just some things that came up, and I won't mention the vendor, but you can bring an AI tool onto your desktop. Have access to all your files. It can automate tasks for you. It sounds wonderful, but all of a sudden now there's some security attack vectors where if people can get in and actually modify that description of what the AI is doing on your computer, they can actually tell the AI to start sending information to a attacker. Right. Yeah. So there's these new sort of things that awareness needs to be built around, and tools like that, for example, that definitely do need some degree of control. But then at the same time, if we don't take advantage of AI, the productivity boost is real. I mean, we're putting what we do in front of people, and for knowledge workers, we're increasing productivity out of the box by at least 20%, sometimes higher. Yeah. So there's massive benefits, and you don't want to be left behind either, because that's not the right place to be.
Right. Oh, there's so many cautionary tales about Kodak and Polaroid and, all those companies or BlackBerry that didn't innovate, that they were like, no, that's never going to happen to us. Yeah, it will. I mean, if Microsoft thought, and Microsoft is doing really well, but if Microsoft thought, hey, we've got everything locked down on the desktop, that's never going to change. And then Apple came along with the iPhone, and now so much is happening through the mobile device that Samsung and Apple probably have as much of a computing foothold that the Microsoft does. But I think what you're saying is that we need to be able to be informed. We need to work with our technology partners so that we understand what the benefit is, the ROI is, but we also have to understand how to make it more securely implemented.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a fast moving spot. So it's, a lot to take in.
So I guess this brings me to the last question, which is going to take up the rest of our time. Probably could take up the rest of our year talking about it because I love this topic. How is AI going to change the profession of HR? I mean, it's a gigantic one, but what do you think, Brian? What's your thought on how it's going to change HR?
Well, my crystal ball isn't, I think, any better than some other people, but I do think that the impact, especially to knowledge work, is incredibly significant. You see hints of some interesting things to think about. Just the other week, there was a new tool that someone put out, a new SaaS application called the meat layer. And the meat layer is where humans can go to register to do jobs that AI assigns them.
Interesting.
So yeah, what's even more interesting is like 100,000 people signed up for it within the first couple of weeks, probably more out of curiosity. But, if the AI needs you to go and do something, it needs a human to do it.
Right.
The humans are the meat layer, right? So
now the robots are literally hiring up.
That's right. That's right. It's a legitimate site to have that happen. Now, I doubt it's going to get a lot of use in the short term, but these are interesting ideas, right? What is our company going to look like? Is it going to be run by robots? And the people in the company are the meat layer, right? They're the things going out and doing tasks that the robots can't do.
Of course. That's
so
awesome.
It's an interesting thing to think about, but I don't think that future is as imminent as some people would lead you to believe. LLMs that we're using for chatbots and AI, they're obviously amazing. They're continuing to improve, but they're also based on a technology that is going to be hard to take the next leap from here. Mm-hmm. And if you don't believe me, I think even the best evidence of this are from the AI companies themselves. They've really stopped talking about AGI because I think everyone realizes the current approach isn't probably going to get there. I mean, there's still some people like Elon Musk talking about it, of course, but that's kind of what he does, right?
Right.
So I don't know what's going on in the research, and these are all great partners of ours, that what next breakthrough, but it's probably not going to be on the current set of technology. Where the innovation, I think the opportunity is in the short term, isn't making the LLM better and better. It will get better and better, but it's not going to probably get 100 times better from here. It's the tooling that uses it. I almost think of like the LLM. My daughter rides horses. It's like the horse. It's extremely utilitarian, but the benefit is going to come in how we make that accessible. It's more in building a better harness, because experts can, ride the horse without a harness at all, but there's very few people who can do that incredibly effective and use this tool. Now it's the tooling we build around it. But the horse isn't going to, start beating a Lamborghini. That's just not going to happen. There's limits to how good the horse can get. And that's kind of where we are. It's probably a bad analogy. It's the first time I've used it. But there's limits to, we're going to have to jump to a whole new paradigm to take that next leap. Maybe that's around the corner. I don't think it is right around the corner. So I think we have a long future. But now, we just need to find better ways to use the underlying tool to get work done better.
I like your analogy from one other perspective, and I'm going to take it a different way.
If I asked my customers what they wanted, they would say faster horses. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Well, but that actually goes to speak to nobody asked for AI. And now all these organizations, I mean, I don't think anybody ever said, I think what we need is a way of being able to think better or have someone else think for us. Probably somebody did. But when I think about the problem that AI is trying to solve, and everybody keeps saying that it's going to take our jobs, I kind of push back and go, no, it's not. It's the same thing that we heard when the internet came out. People are going to lose their jobs because of the internet. No, people got different jobs that paid them a ton more money if they embraced it, if they wrapped their arms around it. And I think the same thing is true with artificial intelligence, LLMs, chatbots, and other things. we can learn a lot about changing the way we work. And it's especially true with HR, because HR is still form-based and still data-based to the extent of we're still doing a lot of the same things that we were doing in 1950, just doing it with different tools.
Yeah.
But I think that, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I agree with that. And, one of the things that I say is that a lot of people think AI should be handled by the CTO and CIO, how that's coming into the company. But the real change here is exactly what you're saying. It's not bringing technology into accelerating or making what we're doing more efficient. It's actually reinventing what we're doing. It's creating entire new business processes, and that needs to be driven by the people who own the business processes, not by IT, right? So, yeah.
Well, and to your point, when you blank slate something and ask someone to reinvent it, the first thing they're going to do is go back to the ways in which they were doing things before, which is completely inefficient. And we're not, especially in HR, we're not built to think out of the box, because one of the problems is that we're dealing with regulations that were built from a 1920s, 30s, and 40s perspective that aren't ready for the AI world. And because of those regulations and because of the way we get things done here in the United States, as well as elsewhere around the world, it's still taking an incremental approach. And those companies that are laying people off now because they're saying they're going to bring AI in and AI is going to do everything for us, or they're going to lose 1,000 people and that's good because AI will take over. I think they're going to struggle, come back and go get those people again, because they're going to realize it's just not, to your point, I don't think it's ready yet, especially in HR.
Yeah, in some areas, it's going to have a bigger impact, but in most areas, it's not going to be doomsday, certainly. Or maybe in 5 years it will. I don't, who knows, right? But
No,
I don't think this year, next year, the year after is going to be quite like that.
No, and that's why I get pissed when I hear people come and say, especially CEOs, that we need to figure out how to, manage with less people and use these darn artificial intelligence tools. Really? Really? I think you need to sit down with someone like yourself, Brian. I think that person needs to sit down with you and have a nice discussion about where that statement goes wrong in lots of different ways, especially though from an HR perspective, because you're not treating your most important resource like your most important resource. You're treating it like a cost, and that's all that matters to you.
Yeah. Well said.
Well, again, I could stand on my soapbox and talk about this all day, Brian, but I'm not going to. I can't, and neither can you. So, Brian, if you have any other words of wisdom for our listeners in the last few seconds, what would it be? Where would they start around this journey? Because there's so much here to deal with.
I think they just need to get out of the, in application kind of use of AI and think a little bit more broadly about how it can really change things. Every vendor is going to have AI inside, but that's a very limited context and perspective. The real change happens when you can connect the dots across different sources of information, knowledge, experience. And that's not all inside of your SaaS app. So really look outside your app and think about how to reinvent some ways things are done.
Excellent. Brian, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. I enjoyed it.
My pleasure. And I might have to have you back on to talk more because, as I said, I can talk about this stuff all day.
Well, I'd be happy to do it. So can I.
All right. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Everybody take care. Stay safe. Hang on. Thank you for listening to the HR Data Labs podcast. Don't forget to hit subscribe and share it with your network. You can also check out the recordings on Spotify or the HR channel, now on Roku and Fire TV. Thank you, take care, and stay safe.